Hi, my name is Sam and welcome to my YouTube channel. In today's soft-spoken ramble, I would like to talk about living in London. I've been living here for 13 and a half years and there are a lot of contrasting opinions about what life is like here in London. So I thought we could have a chat about the pros and cons of this city. And in the spirit of full disclosure, I am one of the very few people who actually enjoy living here, so I might be a little bit biased, but I'll try to be as impartial with my comments as I can possibly be. We will start the channel on a positive note, so we will look at the pros, or well, at least what I think are the pros and the positives of being here. First of all, on a visual and physical level, I think London is stunning, it's beautiful, but not just the usual monuments and landmarks that all the tourists go and see. I think there are a lot of other areas that people wouldn't really know about that can really surprise you. Remember, London is not just a city, it's a region, so it's a big area, it's a county. And what I love about London is that it always surprises you. There is always an area of London that you haven't seen, that you've never heard of, and a friend might have heard of it and they might suggest you go there for a walk, and it's incredible how many parts of London you think you know but you actually don't. So physically you can't get bored of London. Obviously not the whole of London looks city-like. I live in an area which is a little bit outside the city centre, and we'll talk about that later. So it's not what you see in central London all the time. And there are a lot of parks here. We have a lot of green. I come from the middle of nowhere in Italy, close to the city Bologna, but even in Bologna proper as a city, there isn't as much green as we have here in London. It's incredible how many parks we have, and if there is a chance to build and to create a park or an area that people can enjoy a little bit of nature in, London will make the most of it. So they will build it, they will try to advertise it, they will try to really push it so that people can enjoy it, because it is a city and some people like to have a bit of a country kind of feel every now and then, and London is the perfect place for that. Even in the city centre we have a lot of parks, even in areas like King's Cross, where you have a lot of trains obviously and a big train station, there is always a little bit of room and space for a little bit of green. I love that about London. London is very stimulating. You can't get bored. If you like going out like I do, there is always something to do. It doesn't have to be clubbing, we will get on to that soon, but there are museums, there are theatre shows. If you like theatre, this is the place to be. I don't personally like museums that much, so you won't catch me at the British Museum or the National Gallery, but we have plenty of those, and the brilliant thing about London is that they're all free, which doesn't really happen in a lot of other places as far as I know. I personally like the Natural History Museum, the Science Museum, and the V&A. Those are the ones that I sometimes go to, and I highly recommend them. But again, any kind of art or science you like, you will find a museum for it here, which is incredible. I think. About going out, I like clubbing. I'm a dancer, and you can find all sorts of clubs with all sorts of music, all sorts of styles. I am very cheap, I'm very gay, and I like very cheesy, cheap pop. I like my Rihanna's, my Beyonce's, my Lady Gaga's. I can find them, but I have to say it has become, and is still becoming, harder and harder to find places that just play pure, simple pop. But you can find those. But if you like R&B, techno, house, electro, you have all sorts of venues that can provide that. So you can always find something that everyone will like at some point. We have all sorts of parties, all sorts of theme parties. We have day parties as well for those who don't want to party into the night. And that is something that I personally don't really know about other places, but I have to say I've never really lived anywhere else apart from back home, so I don't know if other cities provide these things. If you're a foodie, you can't go wrong with London, because we have all sorts of cuisines everywhere, all around the city. We have a lot of local markets with local products, but also international markets that specifically sell and promote food from all over the world. And we have a lot of events centered around dietary requirements, which I think is very considerate, but also eye-opening for those who, like me for example, are lucky enough not to have any dietary requirements. My brother, for example, is a celiac, so he can't have gluten, and there is a lot of gluten-free stuff here. There are a lot of vegan and vegetarian options as well, and there are, again, festivals and events that promote these things specifically, which I think is great. Again, I don't know if other cities do the same, but it definitely happens here in London. London is very good even for sports. It's insane how many sports even exist. I have to say I'm not sporty at all, so this doesn't affect me much. But if you like any kind of sport, you can find a lot of groups and a lot of teams and a lot of opportunities for you to practice and even to try out new sports. Yoga and Pilates are very big as well, which are more on the health and mindfulness side of things. But if you like normal usual sports, you have those as well. And speaking of that, specifically in London, we have an app or a website as well called Meetup, which is great because it's designed to bring people together. It's not for dating, it's not for sex, it's just people that have a shared interest and they want to do it together. You have the cinema group, the walks around London, you have the book club, you have language courses. So anything that you may want, you can find on this website. So you can do it with other people, you can meet new people, you can do it with friends. There are a lot of cookery classes which are very popular at the moment, and it's a very good way to feel part of a community. I know this app exists in other parts of the world, but I don't know how popular and how used it is. But here it's a very popular thing to resort to, especially if you're new in London. And we will talk about that a little bit later on as a bit of a negative side of London. Obviously, after Brexit, it's harder to come to London, but before Brexit, London was a smaller version of the American dream, I would say. Foreigners from all around the world would come here to make a new life for themselves, to make to start a new career, or to further their career back home in a more rewarding and financially lucrative way. So it was the place to be if you wanted to either start from scratch or to improve what you already had. Unfortunately, now it's harder to come here as a foreigner because you need to be sponsored. So this aspect has decreased or died down a little bit, but the spirit was there at least before Brexit. So these are the brilliant things about London. I think it allows you to be whoever you want to be. As a gay guy, for example, it's great that you can be and do whatever you want. No one will stop you, everyone will accept you, and it can also be a bit of a negative thing, not the accepting part, because obviously that's wonderful, but maybe one of the reasons behind it. A lot of people complain about the fact that in London no one cares about anything and anyone, which is true, and we will talk about that as a negative later on. But in this case it is a positive, because you could literally do whatever you want within, limitations of the law, and people will embrace it, either because they don't care or because they actually really like it. But the end result for someone who wants to be accepted is that in London you can be whatever you want. I'm a singing drag queen, and I am very lucky that I've never had any issues with my drag. Most drag queens don't like walking around in makeup, so they go to the venue out of drag and then they get ready at the venue. I don't do that because I am the opposite. I don't like getting ready at the venue, so if I can avoid it, I will. So I like doing my face at home and without the wig or the dress, and then I go to the venue and then I get fully ready there. But I have never had any problems. I have never suffered any kind of bullying or mockery or anything like that. I know there have been people who have suffered greatly, so I'm not saying that we are fully there yet, but from my personal experience, it's that good. That's how accepting London is, and obviously this doesn't happen everywhere else in the UK, because London is the most open-minded place here, I would say. Just like every other country, the bigger cities have a much more open mind than the smaller ones. So yes, London allows you to be whoever you want to be and to do whatever you want to do without any limitations and restrictions, and I think that's wonderful. But now it's time to mention a couple of cons of living in London. As you may have heard, London is expensive. That is true. It is what it is. I can't really say much to defend it in this instance, but primarily it's about rent, or even if you want to buy a house, it's extortionate. It's extremely expensive, and it's very common in London for people to have one room in a flat or a house, because that's obviously more affordable than getting a full flat for yourself. I personally live in a very big house. It's an old Victorian house. I share with two other people, but my room luckily is the biggest. Right now I am in the living room, which usually has much more light, but I've had to draw the curtains to create this ASMR atmosphere. But I was very lucky when I found this house, because it was and still is very cheap, and luckily the landlord really hasn't increased the rent by much, only by £30 over the 4 years, only because of the cost of living crisis, which is perfectly understandable. But yes, physically living in London, having a roof over your head in London is expensive. And I remember once I performed in Norwich, further up north from London, and out of curiosity I just checked how much a room would cost over there, and I was shocked. I'm very frustrated to find out that for the same amount of money that I pay for a room here, I can have a full 1 or 2 bedroom flat with a garden over there. So after the second flat that I found, I had to stop looking because I was getting really angry. So yes, rent is something that you need to take into consideration if you want to live in London. As for the rest of your everyday life in London, I have to be completely honest, I don't think I am a good benchmark, because I don't drink alcohol, I don't even drink coffee, so I don't usually go to a cafe to have breakfast. So I don't do some of the things that a lot of people do and consider normal. I know that alcohol is extremely expensive here, so I'm lucky that I don't drink, so I can save that money. And yes, of course, a coffee is more expensive here than in Italy, for example, but I don't really have that kind of expense either. But that being said, there are ways to be thrifty even if you do these things. Even when it comes to restaurants and food, of course, you have the expensive ones, but you also have some cheaper options, even in Soho, which is in the heart of London. And I know all these places because these are the places that I go to. So obviously you can do the fancy stuff, but you can also find more affordable things. You just need to know where to look and who to ask. And talking about food, I'm now going to talk about food in supermarkets. Now I am cheap, so I shop in Lidl, and I was very shocked to find out that the same food here and in Italy, where I'm from Lidl, it's much cheaper here than it is in Italy. You can visibly notice the difference, and I was really surprised because we all know that London is expensive, but when I was an online English teacher, I used to have clients that worked in the food industry, and they did confirm that, for a reason that I do not remember, so do not quote me on that, but there is a financial and real reason why food in supermarkets is cheaper in England than other European cities, for example, like Italy. So the same company will charge more for the same product in other areas. Again, I don't remember why, but it's true. Obviously, we don't just have Lidl, we also have high-end supermarkets, but that's up to you if you want to go there or not. I stick with my Lidl because I'm very happy about it. Now, on a more social and emotional level, not many people are in London to stay, which means that it's hard to make friends and to keep them. Actually, it's not really hard to make friends thanks to apps like Meetup, the one that I mentioned earlier. There are a lot of activities that make it easy for people without friends, for whatever reason, to meet other people. It's brilliant. I think it's because we know that this is how London works, so there are a lot of people that are very mindful of that and want to fix it as much as they can. Because no one likes London, people are only here to either learn English if they're foreigners, or to work here for a certain amount of time so they can send money back home, or they can make generally more money here and then they can go back home. Even with English people, you have a lot of English people that live and work in London, but their intention is not to stay. They want to make money and then either go back home or move to another area of England, but London is never anyone's choice as a long-term commitment, unfortunately, may I add. So what does that mean? It means that the friends that you have today you probably won't have physically in a couple of years. This happens all the time. It keeps happening to me. I didn't go to university, but I did a 2-year full-time course, and I met my best friends there. One is Spanish and one is English. Now, unfortunately, they're not in London anymore. My Spanish friend, she was planning to stay here forever. She was never planning to go back. But after a few years, she realised that she just did not belong here as much as she thought she did. So that came as a big shock to me and to her, because she was not expecting that. So after a few years, she went back. My other friend is English, but not from London. So after the course, she went back home, and then she went travelling. And again, physically, I do not have her here. People come and go all the time. Foreigners tend to be here even like for 3 months if they're just here to study English. And the beauty of it is that you can meet a lot of people from a lot of corners of the earth, so chances are that you can then have long-lasting, long-distance friendships, and you can go and visit them, so that's also an excuse to travel more. But in terms of having friends here, it is difficult to hold them down and to keep them here. So that's why apps like Meetup again come in handy, because even if you haven't just moved here like me, I've been here for 13 and a half years, but I constantly need to go to meetups like that because some of my friends leave, maybe even just for 6 months, so they will come back, but most of the time people leave to then never come back, which is sad, but unfortunately it is what it is. But again, there are ways around it. And at least we have the chance to try. And another negative is the coldness, the emotional coldness and detachment of London. Everyone complains about it, and I have to say that I agree with it. I don't know what it is, but there is an emotional coldness about this city, and as silly as this may sound, I think it does have to do also with the colour and shape of the buildings. Especially in central London, you have very tall, whitish, greyish buildings, and I think that if you see them one after the other, it does contribute to a less personal feel to the city. And I can't really put my finger on it though. I can't really tell you what it is that makes London this cold. What I can say is that I can sense, I can feel that I am in London, even if it's an area that I've never been to, because I can smell this emotional detachment in the air. I know it's very weird to say, and I can't quite explain it, but if I get out of a train station, I can tell immediately if I'm in London, because I can sense that coldness. If I go anywhere else in the UK, the minute I get out of the station, it's more welcoming. Again, I don't know how to explain it, but it's true. You need to be there to experience it. So yes, there is this element, which is, I think, the primary element that pushes people away. Another thing that people complain about is the fact that it's hard to make friends, which I disagree with, and that it's hard to then maintain these friendships because people don't care. Now, I said that I don't agree with the fact that it's hard to make friends, but up to a point. So it's true that in London people tend not to care. So it can be hard in that respect to make friends. But again, you can put yourself in a lot of situations where socially you must make friends, like activities and sports and clubbing and meetups. So there is a lot that you personally can do, I think. But it's true that it's very hard to then pin people down, because we tend to be very busy, especially if you like a lot of extracurricular activities like I do, in terms of clubbing and meeting friends, sports. If you like that, it's very hard to be free physically, and to physically have the time. That is true, but you can make an effort if you really want to, and this is the thing that I sort of don't like about people complaining about the fact that it's hard to make friends, because my friends complain about that as well, but then they don't really do much to change that. Some of my friends don't reply to my texts, even saying no. So if I invite them to something, I don't expect them to be free all the time or to want to come all the time, but they don't even bother to say no. And something else that I find a bit sad about London is that people don't like to commit, and they are always on the lookout for something better to do. So let's imagine that I invite you today, I invite you out on Friday. You have no plans and you say yes. But then if between now and Friday you find something better to do, something that you like more, you will cancel on me. It's very typical, not everyone does that. But you will cancel on me simply because you found something better. I personally don't appreciate that, because I would stick with the person that I've made my first commitment with, and I would expect people to do the same. I understand if it's a one-off concert or a one-off thing that you didn't know about previously, fair enough. But if it's a normal thing that you can do any other day, I don't think that's very considerate to your friends. If it's work, it's different. I'm a performer, I'm self-employed, so if I get a last-minute booking, I will take it without thinking twice. But that's work, it's slightly different. So yes, there is a lack of will to commit, but at the same time, whilst people just blame London and other people and society, I would argue that we are society and we individually should try to do something different if we don't like what we have at the moment. So that's my little personal opinion about that. I love the area that I live in. It's called Tottenham Hale in North London, which you may know through Tottenham Hotspur, which is a big stadium, and also it's a football team. I am completely oblivious to football, and I only realised that I lived close to the stadium when I moved here and randomly walked past it. But they also do a lot of concerts. Beyonce has been here, Lady Gaga, and I can hear them from my room. So that's a little perk. I live 15 minutes away from the city centre by tube, which is very good for London. And what I like about it is that although it's fairly close to the city centre, it doesn't have anything that you would expect to find in a city. This is pretty much a sort of suburban area, and I like that because it's full of green and water. We have amazing wetlands and marshes, and it's a great area to come home to after you've spent your day in the hustle and bustle of the city. It's nice, in my opinion, to come home to this. We have everything we need to be self-sufficient. We have a retail park with my beloved Lidl. So we have everything that we need. Obviously, if you want anything related to nightlife, we only have a couple of pubs here, but for that you will have to go to central London or other areas of London. But I find this to be a great compromise. Also, I could not afford to live anywhere else, but I'm very, very happy. And this was a bit of a surprise for me, because I originally come from the middle of nowhere, and if I, as a teenager, if I wanted to have anything remotely related to civilization, I would have to drive 35 minutes to get to Bologna, the main city, and I always thought that I would then want to live in the city centre forever, because I didn't want to be like that anymore. But actually, over the years, I realised that I like being slightly outside the city, and where I live now, for example, is brilliant because it reminds me of home, and I love being in contact with nature. Don't get me wrong, the extent of that contact was a little bit extreme back home, but this one here is perfect. And one last but not less important pro of living in London is that, as I said earlier, my Spanish friend, for example, thought she would want to live here forever, but then she moved back home. Now, obviously, that is bad for me as a friend, but I think that's beautiful, because not everyone is supposed to live far from their family and their hometown. A lot of people come to London because they want a fresh start. They want to run away from what they have back home. But then a few years here allows them to understand that actually they do like what they have back home, and maybe they just needed a little bit of a break. They needed to see it under a different light. So I find it very heartwarming and again just beautiful that an experience in London helps you understand that you do want to live close to your family, close to your childhood friends, and just to go back to the life that you had before this. So these are my opinions. This is the end of my ramble, and let me know in the comments if you live in London currently, or if you have lived in London, what your experience is or was. If you went back, let me know why you went back. And if you've never lived in London, also let me know what kind of perception you have in London as someone who hasn't lived here. And on that note, I will let you go.